Hey, yeah, welcome to week 4. A bit of a smaller update this week. The bulk of this week has been fixing issues with my inventory UI and UMG system in Unreal. But I have added a few new cool features and done a little bit of a refactor to make it a bit more scalable. So if I go into the playground now, there's a couple of things I can show you, which is that if you go to a locker and we get the loot roll as expected, you've obviously got your pencil and keyring represented by the relevant rarity levels, legendary and uncommon. As of last week, you could drag and drop them, but they didn't keep their data, which I'll go into in a bit. But you can now drag them and shift them around, which is pretty cool. You couldn't do that before. You can also now drag them back into the lootable, and the server holds that state. So then if I go to the next locker, and we've got another pencil and a keyring. If I drag the keyring, you can now see that it stacks with a quantity of 2. Obviously, all this art stuff needs to be updated, but you can obviously stack things now, which is pretty cool. And I can go back, and that legendary art is still there, but I'll take that, and then you get 2 and 2. And that's all replicated for multiplayer. So if the other player goes to that locker, they'll see the same state. And I fixed a couple of issues with the server lock not working. So now it actually does work that one person at a time can access a lootable object. And then for the data, I've changed things to make it a little bit more scalable. So within the raid items now, I have this folder of data assets, which drive all of the objects that are going to be the lootable objects in the game. So we've got keyring and pencil, and you can now give it a name and a description. And I've changed the ID to be driven from the data asset, which I think is much better, but time will tell. You can then attach an icon and also give it its rarity level and the amount it can stack within your inventory. So that's pretty cool. That's now added in. And then we've got this interesting one of pickup class, which basically will be an Unreal Engine actor. So the next thing for next week will be, how do I drop an item? So I should be able to drop items on the floor. And in doing so, I should see the relevant mesh or actor that I can then either re-pick up or just leave alone. So with that said, I thought, you know what, it's time to move on and just go through one end-to-end piece of art to do this. So I'm going to create a new data asset that's going to be a cassette, because I want players, when they go into a raid, to be able to choose their own music, because they're going to be very isolated at the start of the game. The multiplayer aspect doesn't come in until later on, which will all be explained as we go through these weeks if we can get there. But with that said, I started to create a cassette. So started to create my high poly. I took it upon myself to learn some more hard surface techniques in ZBrush rather than Maya, which is typically what I would use to do hard surface. And within here, I've created a ton of these and created this faceplate using live booleans. So you can kind of see there, I just basically created a load of primitives, mashed it up with some reference, and then live booleaned it. I then took that in, merged that live boolean, and then Z remeshed it. So if I go into the next sort of phase of where I'm at with it, you can see I've got 2 connected now. I've got a bit of tape going along. And I've got the sort of little spindles and a bit of a tape here. I've also created a couple of faceplate panels, which will obviously be transparent when I get to texturing. But yeah, the idea is take this through just this one piece of art all the way through the pipeline that I'm going to use. See if I can figure out things like generating icons automatically and stuff for those data assets, because it'll be an absolute time saver if so. But yeah, moving forward. And that's pretty much it this week. So next week, try and get this art finished, try and get the droppable mechanic finished, and then also try and move on to that extraction mechanic in Unreal so that you can actually complete a raid. If you can go in, collect a cassette, and get out, then again, we're in a good spot. So progress, and see you next week. Cheers.